Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel for another video on Gran Turismo 7. We're back with some GT World Series Nations highlights at Suzuka in Group 3. So this is my qualifying lap. We're going to let this run while we just introduce you to this video, because we're going to be talking about why we're going through the highlights of this race. We're going to be talking about a subject that I think is in massive need of attention by PD. You may have guessed it or you may not have guessed it, but we're also experiencing it this week at this week's current Daily Race C. It's a turbulent air, and I know some people are going to think, here we go again, but I personally think that PD are actually affecting some good battles. I think the racing would be so much better if we could get on top of this turbulent air and reduce it. We don't need it completely gone, because I do agree with it being there a little bit, but I don't think it should be anywhere near as bad as it is in Gran Turismo 7. Now, part of the reason it's quite bad in this game is because we're running slipstream at a very extreme distance. We saw at Daytona the slipstream was running at over 1.6 seconds pretty much. It was actually having an effect at 1.6 seconds from a car in front. You could see yourself gaining on that very long straight. So that basically means when you're going through the corners, you are going to be picking up some form of loss of aero when you're 1.6 seconds behind another car. Now, this is gradually going to get worse the closer you get to the car in front of you. So for people that don't know what it is, basically the air becomes turbulent. Your car, the closer it gets to the other car in front, basically you're going to get a lot more understeer. And then in slow corners for traction, you get a lot of loss of grip on Gran Turismo. Now, in reality, a GT3 car should not be experiencing this level of loss of grip and traction loss, especially in slower corners. Shouldn't really be affecting a GT3 car anywhere near the levels that it does in this game. I have spoke to real life GT3 drivers, and they agree. If you want to see what it's like, ACC does quite a good example of how you should be able to drive in turbulent air. You do get a little bit on it, but it's nowhere near the effect that is on Gran Turismo, and you're going to see that in this race here. So have a watch, see what you think, and let me know in the comment section if you agree with me. Now, we managed to put ourselves in quite a good position here in qualifying. Unfortunately, wasn't pole position, but it was P2. And we got quite a fast driver behind us. We know V1 Amenti from GT Sport is a very fast driver. And we've got Zorium, who's actually improved his pace massively on GT7, in my personal opinion. And this is going to be interesting. You're going to see straight away. Now, when you're behind another car, the experience you get from this dirty air. Now, some people always say, oh, you always talk about this, but, you know, I don't really understand what it is. You're going to experience this, basically, a lot more in higher lobbies, I would say. In lower lobbies, you're not going to feel it as much because you're not pushing the extremes of what the car can do through the corners. But the higher up you go, as you get faster on the game, you'll start understanding it, because you get a massive wash-off on the front end. It just doesn't want to turn in. And I'm experiencing it now. You can see there, through these corners, I'm having to take it quite cautious, and we're actually 1 second behind. Now, we've got a Menti. Keep an eye on Menti. He's actually going to get within about half a second of us. But what you're going to witness from a Menti is when he's actually within this distance from us, watch the traction loss out of this tight left-hand corner here. So keep an eye on the mirror and keep an eye on our car as we come through here, because we're about 1.2 seconds back, but that gives me amazing traction. It actually gives me better traction than he gets, because we're further away from the slipstream, and we instantly gain 0.3 of a second over a Menti. Now, I did actually do that corner quite well, and I don't think he absolutely nailed that corner, so it might be exaggerated there. But the point is, it's a lot easier. The further back you are from a car, the more traction you get. The further back from a car, the more front end grip you get. And it's a knock-on effect. You see again a Menti through there, losing a little bit of time on that left-hand corner, because we're about 1 second behind, and the Menti is about 0.8 behind us now. Now, this effect is going to carry on. I'm going to keep pushing in this race. You can see we're going to try and go through here. Very difficult corner that when you're in the slipstream. It's very difficult to go completely flat. You have to give it a little lift. And now we're into the chicane. And we're about 1.2 seconds back. And this is a trend that you're going to see in races, I think, at higher levels in Group 3 at tracks like Suzuka. Now, there are some tracks like Daytona that have massively long straights where it kind of gets rid of it and it allows the racing to happen. But personally, I want to see racing not just where you get overtakes on a long straight. I want to see races where you can go side by side with cars through corners, and you can have good battles. You know, if anything, in GT3 car, a slipstream shouldn't be causing you to lose 3 to 4 tenths a second a lap. It shouldn't really be doing that, especially with the long straight at this track. It should actually be pretty neutral, or at least should gain you a little bit, in my personal opinion, to make the racing a little bit more fun. But you can see at this stage, we're 1.2, 1.3 seconds behind P1. and we've got a Menti covered at around 8 temps now. Now a Menti is going to struggle because once we start getting a rhythm, getting used to driving with the dirty air that we're experiencing from P1, we're going to start improving. You see through there, we actually did that reasonably well. We're pretty similar to Azorin through there, and we can see that a Menti is going to start dropping back to about a similar gap that I am from P1. And this is what I say, you end up with a very much a train-like situation where there's a gap to P1 to P2, and that gap is very much equal to P3 from P2. And that's the way it goes because you just cannot get much closer. It's like an invisible barrier on the game. Now PD must be aware of this because I have had numerous people tell me that they have told PD about this situation at World Tour events, and apparently PD are not willing to look into it and shoved them off pretty much about it. So I don't know how true that is 100%. I've had a few people say similar things. Now whether that's still the case today with what they're getting feedback from it, but you know, if anyone from PD watches any of these videos, it really does need to decrease. And this is only Group 3 cars. When you get into Group 1 and Group 2, it's actually unbearable. Super Formula, you cannot follow within 1 second. And for me, that's just not right. I do understand that you do get turbulent air in them cars, but I think you should at least make it so that we can follow and enjoy. You know, at the end of the day, this is a game. And I know they're trying to be realistic, but I think they've gone too far with it. It's actually probably worse than real life. And you know, from what I've heard from real life drivers, we know a few of them. We spoke to a few GT3 drivers and stuff like that, you know, in the past, and they've always said that the turbulent air shouldn't be like this in GT3s. It's not like that. So yeah, it's fairly interesting that PD want to create this system, and I do think it extends from that the aerodynamic system where the slipstream is from 1.6 seconds now or more. If it was a little bit lower, 3/4 of a second, you'd get a lot closer. You know, you could pick up that slipstream on the straights and you get a little bit closer. Maybe you could have a little bit more battling. But yeah, we're going to skip ahead now to lap 5. You can see the gap we've got to a Menti now is 1.7 seconds. So we've actually got him out the slipstream. Now I wasn't sure at this stage if what he was doing that on purpose to try and help save his tyres, because one thing I've noticed now on this game is when you are obviously in the turbulence, you kill your front tyres. Absolutely, it really does affect the grip on them front tyres, and you take a lot more life out your fronts compared to if you're in no slipstream at all. So advantage Azorium's got there, he's got clean air, he's able to push and also go a little bit faster through the corners without taking as much life out of his tyres. Now Azorium is driving very well though. Don't want to take anything away from Azorium in this race because he is absolutely flying and he's driving super consistent, and I'm pushing. And I did notice though that we were able to, if every time he dropped out of the slipstream, we were able to get back into that slipstream. So it does say that if we weren't in that turbulent air, I think we would have been able to at least match or maybe push on a bit closer to him if it wasn't as bad. But yeah, also one thing we don't know is, you know, the tyre wear. It's definitely having an impact. So we're going to lose pace as this race goes on, especially with it being a 14 lap race. Quite a long race for a GT World Series race this. Normally they're around 22 minutes. This one's actually nearer to 30 minutes, which is good. I want longer races, but what we do need to get is an improvement in the ability to drive behind cars. Now we're going to fast forward here as we're about 1.5, 1.8 seconds ahead of a Menti, and you're going to see he's starting to pull away. He actually gets the gap to around this, nearly 1.6 seconds, and at this stage you're not really getting a massive effect like we say from that dirty air. You can see we are gaining though, keep an eye on it, we are gaining tiny amounts, so we're getting a tiny bit, but now we're not getting as much loss of grip through the corners. Instantly we go through this corner a tenth quicker, and it's kind of interesting that clearly we've got the pace, because once we're out of it we can get straight back into that, you know, really bad turbulent air. So through here you can see much more grip. However, as soon as we get to around 1.3, 1.4, you can start feeling it a little bit more, and 1.2 is where it really becomes, you know, noticeable. And we actually go through a purple sector there once we didn't have that first sector. That was the first time we did that first sector and actually gained on P1, was because we didn't actually have the slipstream. But now we're back to 1.2, we're going to start losing a bit through the corners, and that is the way it seems to be going on this game. I'm sure there's other drivers that experience this. Now like I say, this isn't going to be as big an issue for as you go down in ranks in drivers, because as you go down you're probably not, you know, you're going to be a couple of seconds off the pace on the track, and you're probably not pushing to the extremes through the corners, so you're not going to notice it as much. But I do think it'd be nice if they could just lower the effect slightly. I think for Group 3 cars My personal opinion is that we should be following as easy as Group 4 cars. Group 2 cars should follow as easy, if not better, than Group 3. I think even if this was Group 2, it'd be a bit annoying with the loss of area you get. So, yeah, just an improvement there, just to make the racing a bit more fun. Group 1 cars should probably follow like this now. Group 1 cars should have the ability to follow like we are now, I personally feel, with the loss of area you get here, because it'd still be very difficult to get anywhere near a car, even in Group 1, if we were experiencing this level of understeer and stuff. So watching it here, you can see what I'm talking about with the gaps. Look on the replay camera and we can see the gap between P1, 2, 3. All three of us here, probably fairly equally matched anyway in terms of pace. But we just can't get any closer. Now, if we had a slipstream that was still, you know, able to draft you up, but able to follow a little bit easier through the corners, we could have been having one hell of a race right now. Could have been enjoying some really, really close side-by-side action, moves into corners, and it could have been so entertaining. But I see PD want to go for a realistic approach, but I think they've gone beyond realism. I don't think this is realistic the way this game is at the moment. I think it's way too much turbulent air now. Some people are going to think we're whinging, and that's fair enough. I'm just trying to get my opinion across, and hopefully someone at PD can listen to this and maybe implement a system where they improve it. Because like I say, Group 4 turbulent air now is actually noticeable, but it's not to the point where you can't follow and you actually get better side-by-side racing. So maybe if they could implement it so that we still keep the same aero for loss of, you know, like for slipstream, as we look behind us there, as soon as Amenti got into the slipstream through that corner, you saw he was 1.2 seconds back, washes off on the front end, and he goes off on 130R, and then that gives me the ability to, you know, have a gap between myself and P3. But yeah, if they could implement a system where you pick up a slipstream whilst, you know, and you still gain that slipstream, but with less of an effect on the dirty air, I think it'd be brilliant for this game. So yeah, PD, if you are watching, please listen. Let's make Group 2 racing fun, because at the moment, Group 2 racing is basically decided by mistakes or qualifying. There isn't really any racing going on. You can't follow through corners anymore on Group 2 or Group 1. It's literally impossible. So let's make these cars fun to race with, because I think more people want to have good close racing throughout different groups. So yeah, hopefully they'll listen. Hopefully they'll sort this out in a future update, because I know it's not just myself that feels like this. I think there's a lot of drivers on Gran Turismo with the same opinion that I've got. But you know, we're doing okay in this race. Azorium has driven faultless. Have to point this out. In this race, Azorium has driven faultlessly, and at this stage I decided there's no point even trying to push too much towards this. Our tyres, look at our tyres, they were so destroyed from trying to follow in the slipstream. At this stage, you know, on lap 12 we decided to back out and just not risk anything, because we've got a 2-second lead to P3, and we've got, you know, by lap 14 here now, it's gone up to 2.5. I think we could have kept that around 1.6, 1.7 if we really would have pushed, but like I say, there was no point overdriving this car with them front tyres looking like that, and that is because we've had so much understeer through this first sector. We've absolutely killed them front tyres. So I decided no risks, no point overdriving it and crashing and losing a pretty good position in this race. We're in P2, and we're going to pick up some pretty solid points with a P2 finish in this lobby. It's a reasonably ranked lobby. There's some pretty fast drivers in here, so we're definitely going to improve our result with this. So keeping it nice and smooth for this final lap, staying away from that curb. That curb can really fling you off. Again through here, just being careful on the curb and careful on the exit curb there. And yeah, just taking it nice and smooth. You see Amenti gets to about 1.4, 1.7, 1.8 seconds behind us, but he's not going to be able to catch us up on this final lap. And we're going to come away with a pretty solid result here, as long as we don't make a mistake. We see the gap's about 3 seconds now, and like I said, I think that the tyre advantage Azorium had, there wasn't much chance we could do to get to even battling now at this stage anyway. But it would be nice if, I think we definitely had the pace to stay within about 1.5 to 2 seconds if we really pushed. But, you know, we've backed out here. We've decided to take P2. We're not going to risk anything on the final lap. And it's always something I say, you know, in a race like this where you've got a car behind you, a car ahead, that, you know, the gaps are around 2 seconds. Sometimes it's best just to take that position. Don't overdrive it, because it's very easy to make a mistake. But yeah, we're going to keep going here now, all the way to the finishing line, and hopefully go over the line with a pretty solid P2 finish. And you can see that right front tyre, I think it was actually a really good idea that on lap 12 we backed out of it and didn't push anymore in that slipstream, because if we had, that right front tyre was looking very close to completely going and losing all grip. So I think we made a very wise decision in doing what we did, because if I would have carried on pushing in that slipstream, it might not have lasted to the end, even in the Supra. That's how crazy you know, the loss of tyre wear is when you're in the slipstream. But yeah, P2, good points hopefully for that. And yeah, we're going to move on to the next round. I think is it Trial Mountain? I think, yeah, Trial Mountain in Group 3. That'll be an interesting one with the same situation again with tyre wear and stuff like that. But yeah, you can see there, 349 points we take away from that. So good points. But yeah, come on, PD. Let's get this turbulent air fixed. And I'm sure if you've got the same feelings as me with regards to that, let me know in the comment section. Let me know if you've experienced it this week on Daily Race C. Let me know what your thoughts of it is on Daily Race C. Do you prefer it? Some people might prefer it because it means, you know, if you qualify high, you just have an easy win. But for me, I would rather have good fun racing, side-by-side racing. But yeah, let me know in the comment section, and I'll see you for more videos in the future. Bye, everyone.